Hello and welcome to this video, which is a bit different to the previous videos I've done, in that this is just a recap of what I've been up to over the weekend. I thought it might be an idea to create a video about life's adventures and how autism and ADHD might have come into play along the way. So in this case, this video is about my trip to Leeds this weekend. So it's a bank holiday weekend this weekend. Today is Sunday and it's 11:42 p.m. I'm back now from the trip, and tomorrow will be Bank Holiday Monday. So just a quick recap on why I went to Leeds in the first place is that my two children and their mum are on a holiday with her side of the family. It's a holiday I've previously gone on with them 8 years running, but now that we're getting divorced, it makes sense that I don't go. So rather than spend the time at home by myself, I thought, well, let's see if my mates are around. We'll all meet at Neil's house in Leeds and, yeah, have a nice weekend rather than me just being at home feeling a bit lonely and sorry for myself. So, which I need to get used to doing that anyway, being at home by myself. It's the kind of thing I've been looking forward to when I move house. So it's just because it's a holiday I think I would have gone on. I didn't really want to be at home by myself. So, yeah, we organised meeting up. So Neil is my friend who I've known since I went to Portsmouth University. He was the best man at my wedding. And then Duncan, really nice guy, Australian guy. I met Duncan because Neil worked with Duncan and was friends with him. So that's how I ended up meeting Duncan. He flew in from Ireland to meet at Neil's. So yeah, the three of us had a really nice weekend. And yeah, really appreciate the effort from both of them, really. I mean, I don't suppose they did it specifically for me, but yeah, appreciate it nonetheless because they've both got families. And although we were at Neil's house, so his wife and son are there, for Duncan, he came all the way from Ireland. And whilst he was here, his son ended up breaking his collarbone, I think it was, falling off of a climbing frame in a park. So that was a bit stressful for him, and it was going to cut the trip short for him, but he ended up staying and going home on his already planned flight. So anyway, yeah, it was Friday, probably about 6 p.m. that I set off from here to get to Leeds. In the morning, I said to my son, Jamie, I said, there's a chance that mum will pick you up from school. So if she does, I'm going to say goodbye now. Have a really nice holiday, and I'll see you when you get back. And he said, we both know that's not going to happen, meaning I won't be ready in time to go. So he was dead right. I ended up picking him up from school and then still took 2.5 hours before I left. But I hadn't managed to pack everything. And I realised how Duncan's come from Ireland. He's got a limited luggage allowance. Because I didn't have that, I just ended up taking so much stuff that I never ended up needing. I took 4 hoodies. And it was a sweltering weekend. It's hot now, ridiculously hot. I'm probably glistening on this camera right now. And I do not like the heat. Do not like it one little bit. I love winter. I love winter holidays. Anyone who says to me, oh, are you enjoying the weather? My answer is no. Why does anyone enjoy this hot weather? I don't understand it. Why does anyone want to be sweaty, hot and sticky, clothes feeling uncomfortable? Yeah, to me, winter is when it's lovely. I don't like it when it rains because that you can't do anything outside in the rain, really. But I love it when it's crispy cold. You can play tennis in the cold. It's just, yeah, it's just nice. But I do get, there are nice things you can do in the summer warmth, but still, I don't like the heat. So on a cloudy day, sunny but cloudy, if that makes sense. So you're warm. It's not windy, it's not gusty. You can be outside, you can have a barbecue. I appreciate some of the things you can do in the summer. But on a day like today, there's not a cloud in the sky. It's been like it all weekend. The rooms of your house get sweltering. I cannot bear it. So anyway, right now, it's 11:47 p.m. I've got my air conditioning unit that I stole from my outside garden office. That's running right now, hopefully making the bedroom an ice bucket right now. And this room feels quite warm, but it's probably the coldest room in the house normally. And yeah, I'm hoping I'm not just a sweaty mess on the camera. So apologies if I am. So anyway, let's talk about the things we got up to in Leeds. I arrived probably about just after 10 p.m. It was about a 4-hour drive in the car. On the way, I listened to a couple of podcast episodes, and then for the rest of it, I just listened to the same album on repeat that's just come out from a band I like. I think there's like 11 tracks on that, and I probably recycled and repeated over and over again. I don't know, 7 or 8 times. Very, very good album. I just bought myself a nice set of speakers and decided I'm going to get a record player. I just like the idea of having a central thing in the room that's a nice little thing on display that you can put one vinyl record on and you get a nice big bit of artwork to display basically in your house. So when I get my new house, that's what I'm hoping I'll be able to still afford to treat myself to. So I've bought the speakers, they're really good. I just need the turntable now. But I thought I don't have any vinyls. So this album that's just come out that I was listening to all the way there on my Apple Music, I've got the vinyl that's arrived. It's very nice bit of artwork, and I've also ordered the new Muse album. It's called The Wow Signal. So I've got that not coming till June because that's when it releases. So yeah, that's my plan. Get a nice vinyl record player in my house when I move. And so anyway, on the journey to Leeds, it was 4 hours in the car. Pretty easy journey. I've done it before. Still makes me anxious, but overall it went smoothly. I didn't feel like I was getting lost. Didn't feel like the roads were stressful. Yeah, it was nice. And just listening to this album kept me quite happy and chilled the entire time. So arrived at Neil's house at 10:15 p.m. Duncan had been there a few hours already, so they'd already had beers. I think they had already had all the beers, which was fine. I wasn't really into the idea of having a drink that night. And when I got there, they were watching the SpaceX Starship 39, I think it was, or maybe 38, test launch, which I'd never seen anything about, knew nothing about it, but it was super interesting to hear all about how enormous this thing is in comparison to like the Artemis 2 that had just done its mission. The crew have got 4 people on board and a tiny space to operate in, whereas the Starship can take 1,000 people up. So it's a huge different scale, and they're trying to make it all reusable. So it was really cool. Watched that. Neil went to bed about midnight, kind of too tired to see the thing he really wanted to see, which was when the thing comes back down and lands in the ocean. Me having just arrived there and been sat down all this time, I was pretty tired, but not tired enough to go to sleep. So I actually stayed up. And 10 minutes after Neil went to bed, the thing was in the ocean. Massive explosion as it landed in the water. And I'm not sure if that was expected to happen or what they wanted to happen, but there was a whole bunch of people from SpaceX all cheering as a result of that. So, that was good. So I went to bed, had a pretty terrible night's sleep. I kept having recurring thoughts in my sleep, and then that's not something I normally have, but I have had in the past when I started taking a supplement randomly just to try and like help with some ADHD symptoms. When I went to go and buy those supplements, I bought like the most potent ones I can, like mega dose, because I thought, well, the bigger the dose, the more effective it will be, surely. But I think it made a part of your brain overactive, which then led to repetitive thoughts constantly, which was really frustrating. So I stopped taking those supplements. But anyway, for whatever reason, I had that same issue, but in my sleep. So I kept waking up in the night, having the same repetitive thought after waking up and then going back to sleep, and then feeling like I was not in a deep sleep one little bit. And it possibly just being in a different room, not used to the mattress I was on. I did actually take my weighted blanket as my duvet because, love that thing now. And I didn't know whether that it was fair to expect Neil to provide like duvets and pillows to 2 different people coming. So Duncan as well. So I thought I'll just bring mine from home because you always sleep better with your own pillow, don't you? So yeah, for whatever reason, I just kept waking up. And every time I woke up, I realised I was having these repetitive thoughts. So in the morning, I felt very unrested and frustrated that I just kept having the same repetitive dream thought process. So anyway, woke up in the morning, got offered loads of breakfast, but I'm not someone who can ever eat breakfast, except I got offered a bunch of things I turned down and said, no thanks, no thanks, I don't do breakfast. But then the last thing offered was croissants and a pain au chocolat. And to me, there's two things that will make me break keto, or they're very hard to resist when you're on a keto diet. That is fish and chip shop chips and croissants. They're the two things that I find really hard to resist. So I did have a croissant, and it was fine because we were going to be drinking beer that day anyway, which would have taken you out of ketosis. So whatever. Really enjoyed the croissant, and yeah, after that I wanted to have a shower because I cannot wear fresh clothes. I can't put fresh clothes on if I'm not fresh. It's the most horrible feeling to put new clothes on when I've not had a shower. So I wanted to have a shower, but Duncan beat me to it. So he had the first one. And then Neil, too, ended up having a shower before me. And it made me realise just how slow I am at having a shower. They were in and out super quick and dressed. Like, how do they get dry quick enough? I had no idea. It's like Neil must have put himself in the tumble dryer or something for a minute because in the time when I eventually had my shower, I reckon I was in the bathroom for half an hour before I even turned on the shower. Then I had a really long shower, and then took ages to dry off, as I always do. I like to dry off like in a drip dry fashion. Just wrap yourself in a towel, and eventually you'll be dry enough to put clothes on, but it takes ages. That's what I prefer to do. I don't like vigorously rubbing yourself down to get dry quickly. But Neil did his whole shower, got dry and dressed all in the space of about 6 minutes. Don't know how he did it. Duncan was a little bit slower, but yeah, both of them made me think I'm incredibly slow at getting showered, which I think, to be fair, I did already know that. But anyway, so I did eventually get my shower, got dressed, and then we went out to do our various activities that we were doing. So we went to the bar to watch a rugby match. It was a rugby final, which I'm told was like the Champions League of finals for rugby. And it was Bordeaux versus something beginning with an L. If you like rugby, you'll know what match I'm talking about. But we went to this bar to watch that on a screen. Duncan had reserved seating and all that. Then we were going to be going to get a meal out at a really nice restaurant that did all you can eat meats, where you have like 2.5 hours or something at your table and you just eat as much meat as you like and other bits and bobs. So we did that, and then we went on to play snooker. So that was our activities for the night. So I'll quickly go through each one of those and then how, autism traits showed up for me. And so first of all, we went to this bar. It was called the Dry Dock. So it was a big boat on land. And it was the kind of boat, it kind of reminded me of the Black Rock from Lost, if you're familiar with that. Just the shape of it. And it was all metal. And anyway, it's been the most ridiculously hot weekend. So the boat was also quite warm. I don't think there was any fans in there or anything like that. At one point, I tried to get respite from the heat by going outside for fresh air, but it turns out it was cooler inside. So it was quite hard to escape the heat of this place. The heat of the weekend, I mean. So we went into this restaurant. We went into this bar, got sat down at our booth where there was a big TV on the wall, and they said, okay, what sport did you want to watch? Because Duncan had specifically booked this table so we could watch the rugby. So he told them what channel we wanted. They tried to find the channel, he said, but they didn't subscribe to that channel. So at first we're like, oh, this is a disaster. I think Duncan also thought that the match accidentally had already started an hour ago and he'd got the time wrong. But it turns out, due to time zone differences, that's where the problem was. And it hadn't started. It was just about to start. But anyway, luckily the match was being shown on a different channel for free that they did subscribe to. Well, they didn't subscribe, it was on ITV. We were able to watch that match. I know nothing about rugby. I've always thought it's up there as one of the most boring sports to me. I'm sure I appreciate other people like it, but for me, I'm like, there's nothing I'd like less than to be going to watch rugby, to be honest. But didn't mind, it's what they want to do, and you can't always do the thing you want to do. So yeah, I was quite happy to go along with that. However, I think the reason I don't like rugby is I don't understand it. And Neil kindly filled me in on the rules and a lot of that kind of stuff. So that did make it more interesting. But as time went on, I lost interest, and partly I think I just got overwhelmed by traits of autism, to be honest. And I'll tell you about that in a sec. When we sat down, we had 2 buckets of Heineken beers between the 3 of us, which was basically 12 beers. Yeah, 4 each to last the match. But as I find with alcohol, I don't drink at home. I just drink when I'm going out socially with people. And what always happens is I don't know what to do with myself a lot of the time, just being a bit awkward. So if I've got a drink, I just constantly pick it up, have a sip, put it down, and almost immediately I'm taking another sip. And it's not because I'm an alcoholic or anything, far from that, but I just, yeah, it's kind of like, what else am I going to do? I'm sat here at this table, not really following the sport that's on, kind of just taking part in being there, really, and just constantly having a sip, putting it down, and then almost like not even bothering to take your hand away before you pick it up again and have another sip. So I ended up drinking a bit quicker than the other 2 who were, just drinking at a steady pace. And so I ended up getting another bucket of beers in. So I think between us, we ended up having 18 beers on the table. And I think I still finished my share a bit quicker. But I think it's by half time, I had reached a point of like social drain. And I think I can attribute it to a couple of things. So one is because we were watching this rugby match on this big screen, we were sat around this booth, but we were kind of like sat on the side that makes it easy to watch this thing. So we're a little bit, not squashed in, but I felt like I didn't have any personal space. And I've generally got quite a large personal space. If you're in that circle, I'm feeling a little bit invaded. But I get it. It's not like Neil was invading my personal space, really. We were just sat there watching this rugby match. My preference would have been, if the TV wasn't there, the preference for me would have been to be sat underneath where the screen was. But because there was a screen there, that would have been the worst place, because then I would have felt like all eyes were on me from my table and everyone else who might have been watching this match on that same TV. So yeah, sitting underneath it would have been a prime spot if there was no TV there, but also the worst spot because there was a TV. So yeah, the personal space issue was one that just Neil was a bit too close to me, and I just felt like, it feels like just him being in my personal space was draining my energy, because it's just something you can feel. It's like, yeah, when your personal space is being invaded, you can really feel it in your body. And I felt that, and it's not Neil's fault at all. Love him to death, but yeah, just felt that presence a bit too close to me, and I didn't have any more space to shift over because I already had one leg on the other side of the table, and this leg was, between the table legs, and that's because I was trying to get as much personal space as I could get. So to Neil, he probably thought, why is he sat there? He could move over a bit. But anyway, it was fine. Kind of not fine, but fine. Like, I don't expect anyone to change where they were sat for me, and I didn't really have a suitable place to change my seating position. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was just the amount of noise in the place. It wasn't like it was a really high level. It was just a lot of different noise going on. It was loud, but not super loud. So it's not a volume thing that was also quite draining. It was just, you've got the TV on, which itself was pretty quiet, to be honest, but you could hear the commentary. But there was just a million conversations going on all around the room from different people in different groups. We've got the bar just close by, clattering things, and yeah, just general tons of noises. So I was aware of that. But the main one was the heat. I'm very heat sensitive. As I've said, love the winter, love the cold, and I get overwhelmingly hot and uncomfortable very, very easily. So in this heat wave that we're having, being inside of this like metal boat, it just felt really uncomfortably hot. So combined that with the sound, combined that with the personal space issue, I got to a point where I felt like I was socially shutting down a bit, wasn't really getting involved in conversation and stuff. So off I went to the toilets to go and hide out in there. It was a bit nice and cold. I did try hiding out outside, but then I realised it's way hotter outside than it is just being in here. So I found the toilets and it was a bit cooler in there. The sound level when the door was shut was just like a muffle. Just a much better space to be in while no one was in there. And I probably had about 5 minutes in there before someone, also came in and I just left. But that 5 minutes gave me a bit of a boost to be able to go back and watch the second half of the match and take part a bit more. Still, obviously, suffering the heat massively. The sound level, as soon as I left the toilets, it back to its like busyness. So it's, again, not the volume so much, but kind of. Mostly just the many different sounds going on in the room. Just like totally aware of it, and it's making your head feel busy. The personal space issue again. But we're all sat on the same side, so there was no issue with eye contact. Like you'd talk, when I was able to take part, I was talking to Neil, and you'd being sat next to each other, you're not really looking directly at each other that much. You kind of talk, you kind of turn your head, and then, looking away is not a problem. So, those are the three traits I think that came up for me, and it was a bit draining, very draining. And it always would have been draining before I ever looked into neurodivergence and knew anything about it whatsoever. And I think I never would have really understood where it comes from. So it's great to at least understand it and know that, well, if I just go and hide out in the toilets, it helps. And I think, to be honest, that's naturally what I would have done if I wasn't aware of the autism and ADHD. I think I naturally would have gone to the toilets and taken a breather. I probably wouldn't have hung out in there as long as I possibly could have in the past. I would have probably gone in there, taken a breather and gone, all right, better go back to it. And I would have left the toilets way quicker in the past. But this time I took as much time as I possibly could have without anyone else in there before I went back. Anyway, so that was that. They're the things that happened in that bar. So as I say, we went then on to a restaurant. Now this restaurant was amazing. It was called Fuego de Chao, if I've pronounced that right. And they basically do all you can eat meats, and you get like, I think 2 hours or 2.5 hours at the restaurant, and you can eat all the meat you want. They just keep coming round with cooked food, and they just say, would you like rump steak? Would you like sausages? Would you like chicken? And all sorts of stuff comes out. Fillet steaks and garlic steak. There's a lot of steak. There's more steak than other things. There was lamb, the works. It was absolutely amazing. But they'd come round, they'd slice food off these skewers for you. And the way it worked is if your table has this card that's on the green side, they'll keep offering you food. But if you flip it to red, they'll know to leave you alone because you need a rest. Unfortunately, ours stayed on green almost the entire time. And I ended up overeating this huge portion of meat that left me incredibly uncomfortable for the rest of the night. So when we went to snooker, I was suffering so much with the food that I'd eaten. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse because I could feel the food, like literally breathing was painful because I didn't have the room for the air to fill my lungs. And then, I've never eaten so much food. And so what it was is when they were bringing the food round, I had visited the salad cart. So Neil said to me, oh, don't fill up on the salad cart. That's what they want you to do, because then you won't eat the expensive cuts of meat. And really, the star of the show is the meat. So I decided, well, I will enjoy my meal more having a bit of salad on the side. And so I will get just a little bit. I went up to this salad cart and it had so many nice things on it. Candied bacon. It had anchovies. I didn't actually have any of those. I had olives, coleslaw. Everything I took, it filled my entire plate, to the point where there was actually nowhere on the plate to put the meat if it was to come out. But I thought, well, it's probably a bit like the Harvester on a much better scale, a bigger scale and nicer food. But it'll be like the Harvester. You've got time to eat your salad cart stuff, and then 10 minutes later you'll be getting your food. By which time a little bit of that salad would have gone down. It's fine. I'm not going to fill up on salad. So I went to get my salad, and I totally filled my plate. Came back, and almost as soon as I sat down, there's a man there with huge skewers and massive cuts of steak on there. I think it was rump steak. And we're sat right by the kitchen. So we're the first table. I think that all this fresh cuts of meat, they walk past us first. So we're getting offered everything. I imagine if you're a bit further back at the restaurant, they're going to be getting to you last. So I sat down. The minute I'm sat down, rump steak, sir? So I thought, well, I don't know if they'll come back with rump steak, so I ought to say yes. So I said, oh, yes, please. And the way it works is he'll slice it, and then you use the tongs to collect it before it falls off. So I put this bit of steak somewhere on my plate that was on top of some other food because there was no space for it. He walks off, and then before he'd even been able to stick a fork in the last bit of steak, someone else is there saying, would you like chicken, sir? Yes, please. I like chicken. So you got that. He walks off. Sausages, sir. And then, so it's just constant, stream of people offering you different meats. And I'm like, guys, do you think we ought to flip this to the red side so we have a chance to eat this? And Neil was like, no, don't be silly. Keep it coming. Bear in mind, he was sensible enough not to fill up his plate from the salad cart. So anyway, just constant stream of meat. I ended up with this mountain of different meats, including lamb, fillet steak. Oh no, I didn't get fillet steak because I think that was the one I refused because I was like, I can't take any more. I've got this whole plate of food to eat. I will pass. And also, I think at that point, I think the fillet steak must have done a lap and it came back to us because there wasn't a ton of it on the skewer. Maybe because it's an expensive cut of meat they don't put a lot on the skewer. Anyway, I said, oh no, Duncan, have that piece. I don't want fillet steak because I feel like it's going to sit here with all this other meat I've still got to eat. Anyway, so I polished off everything that was on my plate, which was this mountain of steaks and lamb and this and that and the other, along with everything I took from the salad cart, because I desperately didn't want to waste the food that I'd said yes to when they offered it and stuff I'd taken from the cart. I thought it's a bit rude, isn't it, to just waste it. So I ate it, but towards the end, I was so full up, like you could feel every bite going down and almost getting stuck because you're creating a blockage with all the food you're eating. It was just really delicious. Really delicious. Like I would go back there next week. It was so good, but I'd be a bit more sensible about it, knowing what's coming. So what I found about that restaurant, we were in a booth situation with two of us on one side. Neil was sat on the other, and thankfully Neil sat across, so he was opposite Duncan. I was on this end, on this side, and I didn't have anyone in front of me because there's nothing worse than being in a restaurant and you have someone you've got to look at, because then you feel like you've got to force eye contact the whole time you're sat next to or opposite this person. And for me, that would have been incredibly uncomfortable to have someone in front of me, and that would be the whole focus of my time at that restaurant, would be the eye contact situation, and probably trying to force it. And every time I force it and they talk and look at me, I'd immediately feel like I'm looking away, and then I'd be thinking, oh, I hope it doesn't look bad that I'm looking away. Bear in mind though, so Neil and Duncan both knew about the diagnosis I've had fairly recently, and I don't know that they fully understand that autism really does have challenges. And I'll tell you about why I'm saying this in a minute. But I don't know if they see the challenge. I think they recognise that I experience challenges, but I think it's kind of like, oh, well, it's in your head, you can get over it kind of thing. And I don't think it's possible to, because certainly not with the eye contact issue. That's probably the biggest thing that I experience that I find challenging. And the reason I say I don't think I could just overcome it is because I've always sort of masked and done eye contact with people as best as I can. But the best that I can means I'm forcing being uncomfortable doing it. And I've done that my entire life. Always struggled with the eye contact thing. Always tried to do my best to keep eye contact, and always felt incredibly uncomfortable doing it. So I've never just gotten over it by just doing it. And I don't think I'll ever be able to. But there's been a few conversations where they kind of suggest that, well, it's just, how do you want to be perceived? Do you want to be perceived to be confident? Because people who can't look at you when they talk, they don't come across as confident. And I was like, well, I'd love to come across as confident, but it would be masking to force the eye contact to do that. And masking is exhausting. It really is. And I don't think they quite get it. They kind of said, well, I think everyone's a bit like that. Like, no one maintains full eye contact, but I don't think they quite get the extent at which it is uncomfortable. Because I said, well, yeah, you might look away when you're doing the talking a bit, but is that because you feel internally this immense discomfort in doing the eye contact? And they said, no. And I said, well, I do. And I always have. And so that's why it's a struggle. It's the intense, uncomfortable feeling you get when you do eye contact. And I can't just ignore it. You can try and force the eye contact, but really it's draining for you. And also it gives you less focus on what the other person's saying because you're so focused on this uncomfortable feeling. I didn't say it, but I kind of think it's like, imagine trying to do something that requires a bit of attention whilst you've got a fire burning under your feet. Like, you're trying to focus on the thing you've got to do whilst worrying about the thing under your feet burning you. It's almost like that. Like, you can't focus on this thing because you've got this thing going on. And it's like that with the feeling of eye contact. It's probably a terrible analogy, but it sprang to mind, so I thought I'd share that. Anyway, so where was I? I was talking about the food. So yeah, Neil was sat in the corner, not opposite me, so I didn't have to force eye contact. So that was really great. And Duncan, who was sat next to me on my side of the booth, was far enough away that he wasn't in my immediate personal space. So unlike at the bar, being in the restaurant felt really nice. It was noisy, but I think because the noisiness and the hustle and bustle sounds going on in the restaurant were the only thing that would have been a sensory thing going on. I mean, there was obviously smells of food and stuff, but I don't think I really suffer with a problem with smells of food unless I was like hungover or something. It was like, yeah, the restaurant was a fine place to be. It was not uncomfortable. I think I did feel a little bit socially drained actually, and talking less and less, but partly that was the discomfort, I think, from the food as well. Though in general, I don't think there was many situations with the sensory issues. Hustle and bustle sounds were probably the extent of it, to be honest. Not to mention, we just had quite a lot of beer at the bar, so I would say there was a little bit less awareness of the sounds, I guess. We eventually left there. I think we paid about, it was like 75, 80 quid each, which is quite expensive for a meal, but, it was a nice treat, this thing, and I would definitely go back there again. It was so good. So I recommend it. Fuego de Chao, I think that's how you pronounce it. So we had a bit of time between leaving the restaurant and getting to the snooker club. So Neil suggested we go and find a bar, so we did that. There was some live music being played outside. I say live music, it was a guy singing, and I think he had a guitar. There wasn't drums and everything. And it was outside, so it was quite nice. By that point, it was quite late, so it was warm, but the sun wasn't beaming down and causing me a problem. So What was a problem at that point was just how painfully full up I was. So while they sat down and had a drink, I went for a walk. Obviously, being worried that I get lost very, very easily, the fact that there was a person singing made it possible not to get lost, because wherever you went, you could hear him doing his singing. So I just had to follow the sound of the voice to get my way back to where they were sat. So yeah, and didn't get lost. But what annoyed me is I went on 3 different routes where I did a lap of where we were. But there was 3 different ways, I think, to get around. So wherever I went, I seemed to walk past Fuego de Chao, which was the cause of my immense pain in my stomach from having eaten so much food. So I'd go on this walk to kind of escape the pain that they caused me. And there they are. Every time I turn my head and look, there's just Fuego de Chao on my right. And then it was on my left. Anyway, never managed to get lost, which is great. By the time I got back to the table, it was because I'd done all the routes I wanted to do and I didn't really want to do any more. But the pain was still there. I sat down, and then maybe 5 minutes later, we're getting in an Uber to go to the snooker club. So got to the snooker club, and what I found was I was still in agony from the food. Snooker halls are a really nice low level of light. You've got a big light above the table, but there's not much lighting going on elsewhere. So it was quite cosy and relaxed on the eyes, because I definitely have a light sensitivity. So I appreciate being in there for that. But as I say, so full up that in snooker you have to sort of lean over to take your shots, and that feels very like when you're that full up, leaning forwards is not a good idea. 15-20 minutes in, I realised I can't do this for now. Like, you guys just play for a bit. Let me have a bit of time just where I'm just going to pace up and down and walk off this food a bit more. So I did that for a bit. Probably looked like a madman if anyone else was spectating from around the room. This guy just strolling backwards and forwards. It's kind of what I do when I'm on the phone to people. Just pace backwards and forwards constantly. I don't think there was any sensory issues other than the pain that I was feeling from the food. It wasn't noisy. Lighting was great. I think initially I was wearing my sunglasses until Neil pointed it out. And I was like, well, I like to wear glasses even indoors. I'm not trying to be cool. It's one less thing on my senses. But as it happens, the snooker club, obviously being quite dim, wasn't so much a problem. So I took the glasses off. Really enjoyed the snooker, because one thing about snooker is, me and Neil used to play in Portsmouth all the time when we went to university there. It's the kind of game that you can kind of get lost in your thoughts, planning your moves and stuff like that. So I think because there was 3 of us, when you've just had a shot, there's always someone not taking a shot that you could talk to. But it didn't feel awkward that I wasn't doing that, because, you don't have long before you're back with the cue in your hand and you've got to line up your shots and go. So I did feel a bit like socially shutting down, but in a way that I think is appropriate for when you're playing snooker. Like, it's not the kind of game you constantly have continuous chatter over. There was a bit of chatter, but I quite liked, being in that, like, the more you can zone everything else out, the better your shots will be. So that was quite nice. Yeah, after an hour and a half, we got an Uber and went back home. Me and Neil played his board game that he'd just got called Vantage. I love board games. Got loads of them and play them all the time. And so when he'd said about playing this Vantage, I was really tired, but I was quite keen to see it. So we did that. I think it got to about midnight. Neil went to bed after it was a co-op game. I think we lost. And we could have done something to make sure we carried on, but decided, actually, let's pack it up. So Neil went to bed. I think I stayed up another hour and a bit, just chilling out on my phone. Too full up from the food to go to bed when Neil did. So, yeah, I just stayed up until the pain kind of went. And eventually it did. And eventually I could fall asleep. But annoyingly, I woke up in the morning feeling the same as before, where I kept waking up having had those repetitive thoughts. Yeah, so that was no good. I can't remember if I've already mentioned on this video, so if I have, I'll cut this out. But one thing that my autism assessment brought up was that I have very poor social reciprocity. So I think in their assessment, it was based around some fabricated story that the assessor told me about their trip as a family on a holiday, and I think I didn't reciprocate by saying about my holiday or something, or I didn't ask questions about her holiday, which seems really a weird thing to expect someone to do, because surely we're in there for my assessment, not to talk about your holiday. So I find it weird and unlikely that any person, even neurotypical people, would give too much time to them talking about their holiday. I don't know. Oh, they're the experts. But anyway, so it got flagged that I have poor social reciprocity. And then something came up whilst I was at Neil's house, where Hannah, Neil's wife, she had a friend over, and they were outside eating on the decking. I wasn't out there because I said, oh, I'm going to prepare the salad that I brought with me, because I had taken a Caesar salad that was going to otherwise go off if I'd have just left it at home. So I took it to Neil's. I love Caesar salads, and I went about 60 or 70 days in a row just having Caesar salad every day for lunch. And I kind of haven't had it every day now, but I still have it quite regularly. So I didn't cook. I prepared the Caesar salad and then took it outside where everyone else was having their lunch outside. So Hannah's friend Fran was over. I took my salad to the table to eat it, and then on the way saw she was there, and I said, oh, hi. She went, oh, hi, my name's Fran. And I was like, oh, nice to meet you. And I said, oh, no one minds, I'm going to go and eat my food in the shade because it's too hot. And everyone's like, yeah, sure. So I went and sat in the shade by myself. Still, could still shout over to them if I wanted to. But I just people watched them doing their thing, eating my salad by myself, which was fine, comfortably in the shade. And then it occurred to me that when Fran had said her name and I said, oh, nice to meet you, I totally forgot that I was supposed to say, oh, I'm Matt, and share my name. So I think that's an example of poor social reciprocity. I think the given thing is someone introduces themselves and says what their name is, you're supposed to do the same, but I just didn't occur to me. And I know I do that all the time. Do it at tennis, you meet someone and they say, oh, hi, I'm Bob, I'm Greg, they're your opponents. And I'll be like, oh, nice to meet you. And then it's normally the other person going, oh, I'm Jim, this is Matt. And I was like, oh, yeah, I was supposed to probably do that part where you actually say who you are. So, yeah, that was a case of, I think, the poor social reciprocity coming through. So while we're out there, I didn't really know how to interact with Fran. I wasn't expecting her to be there. So when she was there, I felt a bit awkward when I was making my salad and I could hear a voice I wasn't familiar with. I kind of was dreading going out there and having to sort of introduce myself or not, or having to speak with someone who didn't know me and I didn't know them. And I remember just preparing my salad thinking, oh, I wish I could just eat this in here and not have to go outside. But I felt like obliged to, because it would have probably come across rude if I didn't. But anyway, when I went out there, forgot to introduce myself with my name, sat down and ate my salad. Whilst eating my salad, I called out to Fran and said, oh, Fran, sorry, I just realised I never told you my name. I'm Matt. And she went, yeah, you didn't, but I did notice that. But don't worry, your reputation precedes you, so I did know your name. And I wasn't sure. I laughed at the time because I genuinely thought that was a funny thing for her to say. But then afterwards, I started to think oh, my reputation precedes me. I wonder if that's good or bad. And, I don't believe they would have said bad things about me, but they probably shared all the silly things that I've said or done, because I've done plenty of that. I did ask Neil, I was like, later on, I said, oh, how come my reputation precedes me when Fran said that? And he went, oh, I talk about people I know a lot, especially you and all the silly things you've done. So, yeah, I think she's probably heard not the worst of me, because I think the silly things I've said and done are just part of me and who I am and what I'm like. So I don't mind people sharing those things. Some of them are really funny because they're so stupid. But Maybe I'll share those one day on this channel. Just give you a taster. One involves accidentally setting my sat nav to Portsmouth, which would have been a 3-hour journey, as opposed to a trip to, I think it was Harlow, which would have been a 15 or 20-minute journey. But I'd used the wrong side of a business card, and I didn't realise this business card was double-sided. But this restaurant that was supposed to be 20 minutes away had a restaurant in Portsmouth, so their business card was double-sided. So when I was driving, I put the postcode in for Portsmouth and never twigged that I'd entered a PO postcode. So 40 minutes into this drive, someone in the back suddenly realised that my sat-nav was set to Portsmouth. And I dread to think how long I would have gone before I realised. We probably would have started to see the Spinnaker Tower in Portsmouth before I realised. But anyway, so yeah, that was an example with Fran introducing, first of all, I guess, me feeling anxious and dreading going out there because there was a person I wasn't familiar with. And yeah, forgetting to introduce myself properly. That's where I think some examples of autism, perhaps, maybe ADHD with the forgetfulness as well, showed up in that situation. Yeah, had a 4-hour drive home, stopped at the services, got myself a nice iced latte. Oh, not iced latte, it was a frappe. Got myself a nice frappe from Costa. Also got a hot drink as well. Don't know why I got two, really. I kind of wanted the frappe, but thought I'll wash that down with a hot drink. But also bought water as well. So I got all that while I was waiting for my car to charge. Yeah, drove home listening to the exact same album I listened on repeat on the way there, and had that on repeat the entire time. Minus I listened to a podcast from Staying Relevant, which my sister introduced me to recently. Not a massive fan of that podcast, but it can be funny, and I think one of them is Neurodivergent, possibly ADHD, I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, it was a reasonably funny episode on that podcast, and I just like driving along listening to other people talking, because it kind of makes you feel like you've got someone in the car with you. So when driving can feel stressful quite a lot of the time, that I think takes some of the stress out. But I was really feeling like I wanted that album back on repeat. So after that episode, which took about 40 minutes, the rest of my journey was just looping over that album. Loving it. It's a really, really good album. I'm not sure if I told you what it was, actually. I've said how much I love the album. It's called Everyone for 10 Minutes by Bleachers. Amazing. Like, I love it. Just check it out. Check it out. Oh, that's another thing. Yeah, just quickly about being away and possible autism trait here. I don't know what it is, but I've always had this thing where, like, most people, if they're away for some length of time, will unpack their stuff into drawers, and, you know, they won't just keep it in one pile in a corner of a room. But I've always struggled with unpacking because I feel like it puts so much pressure on me to remember where everything is if I unpack. And even if I'm on holiday for like 10 days, I won't want to unpack. I want to live out of that suitcase, even though it's a bit inconvenient because every time you want something, you've got to rummage through and find what you want. But it's very stressful to me if I unpack something. In my head, I'm trying to keep track of where all these different things are in different places. Like, you know, maybe you put your socks in that drawer over there, your iPhone charges over there. And I feel like you're constantly trying to be aware of like where everything is, where you've put stuff and everything like that. So I don't like to unpack stuff. So when I was at Neil's house, given that I drove, I wasn't flying in like Duncan was, I had unlimited luggage allowance. And I took so much stuff that I didn't need to take. But when I got there, I had to have it all in this little pile, as I always do. Couldn't spread my stuff out. But that did happen, actually, because the board games I brought in from my car stayed downstairs. The snacks I bought from the services stayed downstairs. But I didn't care. That's the kind of thing, I didn't care if that stuff got lost. The board games, yes. But when it comes to my clothes, my iPhone charger, all the stuff that really matters to me, it's got to stay in one spot, in one pile. That way I'm not like where did I put this? Where did I put that? Am I going to go home having forgotten to pick that back up? You know what I mean? So yeah, I've always been aware of that, like the struggle with actually unpacking, and it annoyed my ex-partner quite a bit, I think. Like, she would go on holiday and she would immediately want to unpack things and put things in the right places and get rid of the suitcases out of the room, find somewhere to store them. But I'm like, I need to live out this case, because if you put my stuff away, I feel like it's draining to keep track of everything. So anyway, that was a bonus thing I just thought of that maybe you'd identify with as well. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there because I feel like I've discussed everything that was worth discussing. Maybe none of it was worth discussing, to be honest. But anyway, I will catch you on the next video. Thanks.